Hey guys, Preston here. Welcome to another video. Today is the spoiler talk / discussion for Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.2. I did the review yesterday, and so if you don't want to, this is all spoilers. So obviously, if you clicked on it, that means either you've seen it and you want to hear someone talk about it, or you don't really care about spoilers. But just so you know, it's huge spoilers. I'm gonna talk about the biggest plot points, and I'll mention all the after credit scenes too, because there's like 5 of them this time around. So I can go more in depth on stuff I wanted to talk about yesterday, give examples of points that I said were cool, and all that. So it's good. Well, first thing I want to mention is there's a lot of Easter eggs in this one that you may not pick up on if you don't know the source material a lot. I didn't pick up on them originally either. I only found out because, there's always videos dedicated that were people go through movies and they pick out Easter eggs and explain them, right? So that was the one I got, Mr. Sunday Movies. He does all that all the time, right? So I did that. I watched that. And so I saw a review and they said they felt like Sylvester Stallone's character in that team didn't work and it didn't belong in the movie. And it's like, why are they there? Are they trying to make a spin-off or something? The answer is they're not. Obviously, if it's so you don't have to worry about that. Like, if you think they're in there too much or you're worried about them, replacing the actual team now, it's not. It's just a reference to the original Guardians of the Galaxy team, because the team now that's been in the movies, the main team we see in the movies, is a newer version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The character Yondu and Stallone's character and all those guys that he was with, Stallone at the end of their after credit scene, those are the original Guardians of the Galaxy. That's why they were there. It was a callback, it was a cool little Easter egg reference thing that people may not have picked up on. So I just thought I'd bring it up in case anyone thought how the review I watched did and they were worried about it, saying it didn't belong there, So that was fine, obviously. So just, the music is great again. Like I said, a lot of 70s, 80s songs. Like I said, when my grandma, she knew most of them. Now, I guess we'll talk about some bigger plot points. The stuff, when I said the comedy didn't hit, I was being really harsh. It didn't. Obviously, I gave it an 8.5, which doesn't sound harsh, but I was being pretty harsh on the movie. Me just being a fan of the Marvel movies, I'd just end up giving all of them 10s. If I did like this one a lot, almost as much as the first Guardians. I think I liked the first one just a little bit more, but maybe over time I like the second one more. But so for the comic parts, I was I guess we can't get to that part first. So there's the scene where Yondu is there, and he obviously, how he has got this thing for Star-Lord and Peter, and he doesn't do anything about him. He never seems to stop him and stuff. He's always helping him out. So the other Ravagers were getting angry at this, obviously, because it's not part of their code. And earlier in the film, Yondu and them met up with Stallone's characters. He's playing one of the leaders of another Ravager group, and he disowned Yondu. So that made Yondu's group even more distrustful and kind of getting angry with Yondu. And so they went to get Rocket. Well, the gold people who, I'm doing this all in the wrong order. All right, so the gold people, I think they're the sovereign people or something. They're they all choose the DNA and stuff that goes into their citizens and stuff. In the beginning of the movie, that monster you see in the trailers, the sovereign people paid them to fight him off and protect this huge battery thing. And of course, Rocket, being Rocket, stole some little battery things from them. So that got him really pissed. So they paid the Ravagers to go get him, which led to a really cool fight scene. It's one of the many examples. This was just Rocket on his own, though, just being completely bad arse, It wasn't. Oh man, it's crazy. So yeah, it was just Rocket, because it was Peter, Gamora, and Drax already left to go see Ego. They went to Ego's planet because he shows up and says, "Peter, I'm your father." Yeah, we knew this. Oh, well, you should have known that already from the trailers. So that's happening. It's Nebula tied up, Baby Groot, and Rocket all alone. And so Rocket's hiding up in the trees, and the whole group of Ravagers shows up, and he's just jumping around using his tricks. He outwits them pretty much in his tech, because he's a tech guy. He has a lot of crazy stuff. So he uses these, I don't even know what you'd call them, but something has to be manipulating gravity, right? Because they throw all the group of people in the air and then they slam them back down, and he had one on each side, and is just going back and forth with two separate groups of people, just repeatedly up and down, up and down. Oh, there's one. The first thing, it was like a bunch of darts actually that shot out, and then that, and then. So he was just kicking butt, and it was a really cool scene the whole time, and you're getting into it. And then basically it ends with they get to him eventually, because obviously he ran out of gimmicks. And then Groot frees Nebula, because Groot's like the kid and he was easily convinced to let her go to help, and she did not help, of course. She ended up working with the Ravengers. And so they basically had like a little Mexican standoff kind of thing, the Ravengers, once they were with Rocket, because he's saying they can't kill the Guardians or something, because he had a reason, but they were all like, it said they don't want the Nova Corps coming after him, but Taserface, which is part of the jokes that we'll talk about later, he speaks up and says you won't kill him just because it's Peter, it's Star-Lord. And so they all aim their guns at each other separately. You know, those who support Yondu, those against Yondu, and Nebula kind of just comes in, takes control, and they overthrow Yondu. I think they shoot his mohawk off, and they take Rocket and Groot too. So they're all tied up, locked up in the ship for the Ravagers, and it's a whole thing about that where they're about to die, or they're killing they're killing the Ravagers who are against them, right? And he throwing them, launching them out into space, which obviously is like a dark, kind of messed up moment. And then, of course, they throw the humor in, which you can say, I think some people didn't like it. I was fine with it. I was just, like I said, I was being picky with it. And so, while this is all happening, the guy says he's Taserface. And then, obviously, Rocket, being Rocket, has plenty of jokes for how stupid the name is, which they were funny. They fit nice. So stuff, they inserted humor in the more serious stuff. Like, in the end, the darkest thing in this movie is you find out it is semi-predictable. What I was saying, there's some predictable parts. Like, eventually, they tell you that Peter's dad, Kurt Russell's character Ego, they're leaving planet. You find out he's the bad guy for the movie eventually when they tell you. But beforehand, obviously, I started to think it was, because it kind of made it too obvious, because they had like Gamora saying that there's something off about this place, and you need to. Think you're being too trusting and stuff like that, so you kind of got like, yeah, it's probably gonna happen. Plus, it's kind of like a cliche thing. I think it's kind of just a predictable thing in the first place. They did it right though, even though it was predictable. It still didn't take me out of it, and I was still very impressed with it. One of the ways they did that is they made it even darker, because he finds out, and so he shows Peter the whole universe, right? And like his eyes start glowing, and he says, I think it's infinite or something, or eternity. And eternity is a reference to like a celestial even bigger than Ego in the Marvel universe. But anyways, he's looking at that, and then Ego starts showing him all these things. The first thing he showed him was that he wasn't just with Peter's mom. He was with tons and tons of women trying to get kids who would do the thing Peter's doing right now. And so that was obviously like a red flag, and it kind of messed with them a bit, but it gets worse. And just around the same time, Gamora and Nebula, they got a fight, because Nebula phased over to Ego's planet, tried to kill her. That kind of, part of their sister thing is they come together and they get over that stuff later. And then they were kind of getting over it after they like saved each other and stuff. And they saw just a pile of bones, like in Ego's, somewhere in Ego, as it's obviously he's the planet, so somewhere below ground. And so then it cuts back to them, and eventually he goes off, because he's still enjoying it, like the planet thing, and he's not completely phased. He's like, I thought you loved my mother, after he saw the thing with all the people. He's like, yeah, I did. I visited her at least three times, and I always knew if I went back the fourth time I would stay forever. And so that, you're kind of like, okay, it makes sense. And then the part, there's like a one-liner that just completely sets Peter off, obviously, and it's about his mom. Apparently, you find out that Ego killed his mom. He said, that's why it hurt me so much when I put that tumor in her head. So that means, obviously means Ego is the one who killed Peter's mother. And obviously, as you can expect, he did not enjoy that so much. So he just pulled out both blasters and just went to town on the human, like, main form of Ego. Which even that didn't destroy that, because he's the planet itself. So it kind of just pissed him off. And he, like, stabbed through Peter with, like, this energy thing. He was kind of just, instead of, like, using him as a battery, I guess they were draining him out, plus Ego's powers to use those plants. He planted at the beginning to kind of just absorb all the other planets, and he broke out, Peter did, and all the chaos ensues then, because then the big fight scene happens, obviously, the ending fight scene. And so I did like the way they did that. Like, obviously it adds more depth to the character, because obviously Ronan was just like an evil guy, generic evil guy, hates a whole race of people or something, that's what he was fueled by. But this is like, Peter has a reason to hate him. It's not just he's saving the world, it's he killed my mother and he's trying to destroy the world. So it adds more depth to the villain this time around, which is really nice. And then the whole fight scene, which was awesome too, they use like this mining ship with lasers, and there's a scene where the cool part with the tech, they're using like the laser super like ball form, and they can roll anywhere on the ship, so they put it all around, and they just blew up all because the sovereign people found out where they were. They went to Ego's planet too, so they had to fight those ships and Ego at the same time, and so they got rid of all those ships with that. And then in the end, obviously, you had the emotional part I was talking about. This is probably the last thing I'll mention, just because these are the biggest plot points you got. Ego killing Peter's mother, the fact that Ego's the villain, obviously. Peter and Gamora, I believe, are together now, because obviously they've been messing with it and kind of flirting with the idea the first two movies. The first movie, and they messed with it a lot towards the first half of the second movie. And at the end, they're kind of like embracing each other, looking out. And I'll explain what they're looking at later, but yeah. And so I think they're a thing now. The sisterhood between Nebula and Gamora is back, and so they don't really hate each other. They have a rivalry, and obviously you learn about why Nebula is the way she is, and you kind of start to feel empathy for her, because she was torn apart and stuff by Thanos, and obviously it's because she kept losing fights to Gamora. So obviously it's more of Thanos' fault, but you can understand why she got kind of mad at Gamora a lot, and Gamora realized it too, and they had an apologetic moment and stuff. Nebula's gonna want to go after Thanos too, which obviously ties into the next Avengers movie. And then the emotional part was Yondu dies. Yeah, Yondu dies. He was probably borderline the coolest character in this movie, action scene wise. I heard a lot of people like Drax because of the humor stuff he brought, but Yondu had really cool scenes in this movie, and they really flushed out his character a lot, because obviously he was dying, which I liked. So they tried to get you as much as they could with the stuff they were using on him, right? So Yondu, he's kind of portrayed as like a jerk in the first movie, but you knew obviously he cared for Peter a little bit, because he still wasn't doing anything about him. And in this movie, he gets tied close to a lot more people. So obviously he's kicked out of the Ravagers, and so when he first meets up, he's with Rocket and them, because that's how he escapes from his ship. And him and Rocket bond over. They kind of got the same thing, and it's weird because the way they bond was cool though, because they're both like very angry, stubborn people, and so the bonding happened while they were yelling and fighting with each other. Yondu basically highlighted that they're the same type of person, where they're lying about their true intentions, because like they don't want it to be known within that they're kind of got soft stuff to them, and that's like, so you find out Yondu was so hard on Peter, but he still does all this stuff for him because he actually cares for Peter, I guess you could say, if you want to be corny. He loves Peter in a way, like he and Peter and then Yondu both realize that at the end, because Peter's obviously fighting Ego to hold him off so they can blow up his brain, and so the whole plane is exploding when they blow up the brain, and Peter's still there. And there's a scene earlier in the fight where Rocket says he's the one who's going to help Peter get out, and Yondu says, no, let me have this one, I've done so much bad. So you kind of feel like he might die, or he's just her, but you don't want it to, so you kind of just like try to ignore that part. And he gets one booster, like one jetpack kind of thing, and he can fly out of here in one space suit, which lets him breathe out in outer space, obviously. And so he goes and swoops up Peter, which is it was a predictable part. It still worked once again. It was like you knew it was going to happen. Like Peter was just standing there. I'm like, yep, Yondu was going to show up and pick him up, right? But just still, then they had a lot of dialogue in between each other when they're going up, and Peter kind of realizes that Yondu's like his actual father figure because his real father was a dick. So they try to make it more touching moments, and it worked because you knew it. They kind of stood up in the first movie the way Yondu acted, so you kind of realize Peter comes to the realization that Yondu's his real dad, and like not birth dad, but like feels like that's his real dad, and so it gets emotional there. And then once they get into space, Yondu gives him the spacesuit, and Peter's just yelling no, and all that stuff, and Yondu's just kind of staring at him, embracing him one last time. Then obviously he dies, and so it wasn't nothing funny about this part. They did it right. They didn't throw in comedy because they really wanted it to stick, and so the whole theater was silent. I heard it did get. I don't cry in movies, or I do my best never to cry in a movie. I felt like that feeling in your chest, like pit of your stomach, where it's kind of just like, yeah, this is sad, But my sister was crying a little bit. Obviously, she cries a lot, but a lot of people. It was an emotional scene, and it worked. It did work. It wasn't like ineffective. I wasn't like, yeah, this is nothing, right? And so they kept playing it for the rest of the movie with the cool part. There's just more cool things, and so a lot of stuff that happened in the beginning of the movie ties back to the end, like the batteries Rocket stole. They wouldn't have been able to defeat Ego if he didn't steal those batteries. So that did work out. And then at the beginning, Yondu got excommunicated from the Ravagers because, he wasn't following the code or whatever. And so the death of Yondu really affected Peter, obviously, because he's like come to the realization that finally he's like, yeah, that was my dad. So he lost his dad, And then Rocket, because he actually grew close to Yondu. And Rocket's only close with Groot in a way, but since Groot's like a little baby, it's kind of hard to have more like time together, more emotional stuff with each other. Not gay stuff, but what I meant by that. More bonding, friendship stuff. And so Yondu kind of actually spoke to him, and they understood each other. He kind of helped Rocket grow as a character, as Rocket's character progression, I guess. So when he died, that wrecked Rocket too. So I feel like Rocket's going to be a little changed. The next movie maybe a bit more mature, a bit more, I don't know, something like that. And then, you find out that Rocket calls all of his old Ravager buddies the leaders, and since he died that way, they give him I guess it's like a Viking funeral. The Ravagers have their own code, and so they have their own funeral. It's like their initiation into their afterlife and stuff, and so they all show up and they're launching off like fireworks and stuff. You don't question the logistics of that, fireworks in outer space, but they all showed up, and like he got the funeral he actually wanted. And so the one Ravager buddy who stayed with him after, so he got really excited in the ship. He was like, yes, yeah, and so this is another moment trying to add to the emotion. And then that's where it ends off there with Peter and Gamora kind of embracing, and she finally acknowledged the thing between them, and then they kind of just embrace each other. So that's going to be a thing, I assume, going into Infinity War. And then obviously Rocket's left on a sad note still, and that's kind of just how it ends, the first part. So it ends with Yondu dying. But the after credit scene, obviously where they're going next will be with the Avengers, and so they'll explain how they got there in that, because there wasn't an after credit scene this time connecting them to the Avengers. It just already. And so the after credit scenes this time were mostly humorous scenes, like just humor scenes. I can't remember what the first one was. I'll tell you about the ones I remember, and I remember most of the important ones. So, first thing was Stan Lee. You find out that it's implied that his character is kind of like a watcher. I don't know what they're called, but it's in the Marvel universe. They're like these things that look like babies, but they're bigger than humans, and they got the shape of a baby, so their head's bigger than the rest of their body and stuff, and they just kind of watch over everything. And Stanley was there talking to him, so he kind of infer that Stanley's character is always in these situations with these Marvel characters because he's an informant for the Watchers, which is a cool kind of just funny thing to throw in there, because apparently it was a fan theory for a while. And then you got Teenage Groot, which I guess goes to show that Groot, he won't be a baby. next movie, obviously, which is good. I know people liked the baby groups, just kind of like a cute thing or whatever. It was kind of just a comedy aspect. I think Groot is better served when he can be just kicking the crap out of people, being really awesome. So it's nice to have him back. Obviously he'll be an adult by the next Avengers, because I think, they said this movie takes place like 2 months after the first Guardians, so like 2 months after 2014, I guess. So there's been a lot of other stuff in the Marvel Universe that happened before this. So I guess you would say, Peter and Gamora's relationships will probably be full throttle, and Groot will be an adult again. And so you'll see that progression. We find out who the possible villain for Guardians 3 is when the Sovereign people, Golden people, are still mad because they lost again, and they lost like their whole fleet. So they got this like chamber thing, and they said Adam, which is referring to Adam Warlock, I believe is the character they're talking about. He's a powerful Marvel character, and he's been on the sides of both good and bad. So it's a possibility that he'll probably be on the bad side this time, and he will be the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 villain, which is cool. And then And then you got a scene with another Easter egg with Stallone and all the other characters from the original Guardians, except Yondu because he's dead. And so it's just a reference to the team that came before the team they used for the films. So yeah, that's pretty much all the spoiler stuff. I really like the movie. Like I said, the action scenes. The scene when they were escaping the plane, for the most part, like that whole section of film where Rocket was fighting off the Ravagers and he got kidnapped, and then him and Yondu escape. Those two fight scenes were amazing. You just got Yondu walking around calmly, has his arrows just flying everywhere, just going right through people's hearts, and like it shows like the streak of red left behind. It's like these crazy zigzag patterns, and he's just taking everyone out. It's like just cool. And you've seen it in the trailer. I think they have the scene where they're just walking down like this narrow strip of like it's not hallway, but I would call it hallway, and all the bodies, because he's still going, and right, so you just see like it's just raining bodies around them, and it's like, it's cool, yeah. Or like takes out the lights, then takes the people out, so you kind of see this glow just going through people. It was just, that whole scene was really cool. That's probably that scene. If I had to rank the fight scenes, the finale fight scene, obviously, then the Yondu fight scene with the arrow, and then the Rocket fight scene. The kind of Yondu and Rocket kind of had a lot of fight scenes together. Gamora didn't really. She didn't get much fighting in. It was weird. Yeah, this movie did not have a lot of action for Gamora or Drax, actually. Now that I think of it, they had the beginning fight scene with the alien, which they didn't really show much of, because they use it as like the way to roll the credits. So it's kind of just baby group dancing around to whatever the first song they played. I can't remember it right now, but that was a good song. And then, so there's that. And then they didn't do much afterwards, because they couldn't really fight Ego that well, and they weren't on the planet, so I guess they got less fight time, but Rocket and Yondu got more, and now Yondu's dead, obviously. Mantis is a new character, forgot to mention. She did well with the role she played. She helped the team out, actually, by putting Ego to sleep for a while, because that's one of the things she could do. That's why Ego kept her around, because she could put him to sleep. And so she was doing that until like a piece of debris hit her in the head or something, and that woke him back up, or the rest of the fight scene occurred. So she wasn't just used for that humorous part you saw in the trailer. I think Drax is more used for humor, and Gamora was just kind of like this relationship. She was just plugged into all the different relationships the whole time. She wasn't doing much fighting. She was just getting more romantically involved with Peter and more in a sisterly bond with Nebula. So yeah, she didn't do much fighting. Yeah, so that is all I really want to talk about with the spoilers. Let me know what fight scenes you like the best in the comments below. What did you think of the movie? Do you think you would have rated it higher or lower than me? So I've seen two different reviews. One person gave it a 10 out of 10. The other person was more critical of it and said it wasn't as good as the first Guardians, and worse than some other Marvel movies too. So it's kind of been mixed, everything I've seen so far. But let me know what you think about anything I mentioned below. If you feel free, if you want to discuss more spoilers with me in the comments, I will reply, and we can have a discussion about some of the stuff, because there's obviously a lot more than what I mentioned, but I didn't want to make this an hour-long video. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. This is Game Preston signing out.